Hey there, YTPC. It's your boy Cosmo, Cat Dad Piper, and tonight I'm smoking my Yves St. Claude, the French Connection. And in it, I am smoking Cornell and Diehl Nutty Irishman. So, I was about to fall asleep last night and was reminded of something I discovered over several years of doing this coffee subscription service where you would blind taste coffee and combine your aroma notes and flavor notes as far as what you're tasting and compare that with what the roasters and the distributors got from the coffee. And thought I should make a video to help explain my approach to tasting. It can be applied to coffee, which I may refer to more than tobacco just because as far as my pipe journey, I have more experience with coffee. Can be applied to pipe tobacco, whiskey, food. So I believe there are two types of tasting. The first one would be what I would call flavoring. What I mean by that is if you add flavor to something, like say, for example, in the case of tobacco, Colt Blood Red Moon. They added a cherry flavoring to that tobacco, whether it be in a topping or in the Cavendish that they use. So they engineered or designed that that tobacco to taste like cherry. They knowingly added cherry into that. And so, as expected, you taste cherry. Just as if you go to a coffee shop and get a caramel latte, you will taste caramel because they add caramel flavoring to it. The other type of tasting you do is what I call memory tasting. And the best way to explain that is to think of the expression that I'm sure you've heard before, tastes like chicken. For example, you may have a different type of meat, like alligator or some other exotic meat. And oftentimes people say, tastes like chicken. Of course, it's not chicken. Somebody who cuts up an alligator to sell the meat, they don't add chicken flavoring to it. But what it is the taste buds in your mouth and in your nose. Because taste is aromatic, it's what you smell. Taste is what you taste with your tongue, your lips. Those sensors within your nose and your mouth send receptors to your brain, and your brain registers it as chicken. So you say it tastes like chicken because it's a familiar taste. Which is why I say it's memory tasting. And so, when I did this blind coffee tasting, for example, we use an Ethiopia. Oftentimes, Ethiopian will have a fruity flavor, oftentimes blueberry. Now, they didn't add blueberry to it. It's a single origin coffee. Meaning that for whatever reason, the way the beans develop, in that region that the beans come from. And when they're roasted in a certain way and the beans are dried in a certain way, they create a product that that tells the sensors in your taste buds. They tell your brain that it tastes like blueberry, even though there's no blueberry involved. Let me give this a quick relight in a tamp, and we'll continue on here. So, oftentimes in my coffee tasting journey, I would get really strange flavors where I recognize a flavor, but I had to pinpoint in my mind. I'd have to connect it to a memory in my mind as to tell you what it tastes like. There was one coffee in particular I remember. I don't remember which one it was, but there was a coffee at one point that, even though it was a natural coffee with no flavorings or toppings added, my mind said this tastes like watermelon Jolly Ranchers. And that's because I've had watermelon Jolly Ranchers, which was intentionally flavored to taste like watermelon, at least in the candy sense. Well, my mind remembered that. And so my taste buds recalled that memory. Another way to think of it is, and I think most of us in the YTP are old enough to know this term, but think of your mind as having a Rolodex or a catalog. If you don't know what that means, ask Google. But think of your mind having a Rolodex of memories of flavors. And so as my mind was going through the Rolodex of what my taste buds were tasting, it said, hey, this is like watermelon Jolly Rancher. So there's a lot of tobaccos you may get, like Cross-Eyed Cricket, for example, is one of my favorites. Now, it does have a rum topping, and rum is a sugar-based alcohol, so that is where I get the sweetness from it. But it's not where I get the coffee notes or the roasted notes. That comes from the actual natural flavors that come from whatever they use for tobacco. And so when I'm tasting that with my mouth, when I'm smelling it with my nose, I don't actually taste coffee because there's no coffee in it. With those taste buds, those sensors, they connect to my mind, they connect to that Rolodex, that catalog of tastes that I've had in the past. And I recall from that Rolodex and I pull out coffee. And so that's what I taste. Somehow this is a very simple, yet complex concept. And it's something you have to develop. You have to learn how to channel that Rolodex in your mind. When I was doing those blind coffee tastings, I didn't get to see the notes as far as what the roaster or the distributor tasted. And oftentimes they didn't match up, but what they would taste would maybe be something that would be similar or adjacent. So instead of watermelon Jolly Rancher, they might say strawberry hard candy. And so you can kind of see where you're making that connection. But there are times when I was developing my skills with tasting coffee where I would take one or two sips and I'd know the flavor. It would be familiar. But I'd have to sit there almost contemplatively, and let that flavor register in my mind and roll through the Rolodex in my mind until it found a match. So, that is why I say there's two types of tasting. And if you try to channel that memory, channel those past tastes, those past flavors you have had that occurred naturally, you can figure out what something tastes like. Hopefully none of tobaccos taste like chicken, but I hope that this gives you a better understanding, at least my approach to how I taste things, whether it be coffee, tobacco, or everything else. So if you know something's topped or made with a cherry flavoring, yeah, you're going to taste cherry. But you could naturally taste chocolate in a tobacco, and it may not have any flavorings added. It just may be the natural tobacco and how the leaves were processed that created that flavor that your tongue tasted, that your mouth smelled, and somehow that's triggering or finding a match of memories in your Rolodex. So I hope that helps you out on your journey and as you continue to explore and taste new tobaccos. If you have other insights or tips that you have or other smokers, leave them in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on my process, and let me know what you're smoking today. Hope you enjoyed this, and as always, thanks for watching and subscribing, and God bless, and we'll see you soon.